Hello and welcome. Moss Adams is pleased that you joined us for today's session, Cryptocurrency in Higher Education and Not-for-Profits. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining. We're pleased to present our continuing professional education webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session offers 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy requirements. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of polling questions. To participate in the polls, please check the button next to your answer within the slide window and click Submit. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget and download your CPE certificate. Don't worry if you can't download your CPE certificate today. We'll email you a copy in 2 weeks. If attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our group CPE attendance sheet, available in our Slide Deck and Handouts widget to receive credit. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. CPE credit can only be awarded to participants registered as themselves and isn't available for participants who view the on-demand version. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
Before we kick off today's presentation, we're going to start with our first poll question. Where is everyone physically located? A, West Coast, B, Midwest, C, Northeast, D, South, E, International. I'll give you all a few moments to respond. To respond, please click the button next to the answer you choose and hit Submit. If you can't see the Submit button, please enlarge your slide area. Great. We'll give everybody a few more moments. And let's check out our results. It looks like a lot of you are coming from the West Coast. To you and everybody else, welcome. And now I would like to introduce today's presenters, Ali Chalak, partner here at Moss Adams, and our guest, AJ Prager, director at Prager & Company. Their bios and contact information are located in your webcast console if you would like more information. And now I'd like to turn the floor over to Ali to get the presentation started.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Ali Chalak here with Moss Adams. A pleasure to be with you all. We will go into our second polling question. Danielle.
All right, poll question number 2. How familiar are you with cryptocurrency and the technology behind it? A, I am Satoshi Nakamoto. Fun fact, Satoshi Nakamoto published a paper in 2008 that introduced cryptocurrency to a much wider audience, initiating its rise to popularity. B, I'm familiar with it, but would like to know more. C, crypto, what? As a reminder, you do have the option to submit questions for us by using the Q&A window. We have quite a bit of content to cover today, so if we don't have time to respond during the webcast, we'll do our best to follow up with you afterwards. As a reminder, please hit the radio button next to your response and hit the Submit button. If you're not able to view the poll questions, please keep in mind they are popping up in your slide view. So if you've minimized the slides, please go down to the icons at the bottom of your screen and pull up the slides. And here are our results.
Wonderful. It seems like the majority of us are familiar with it. And, you know, I think what's going to happen in this presentation is we're going to we're just going to give you a high-level review of the cryptocurrency, the technology behind it, what it is. Then AJ will be going through the results of the survey, and he'll be talking about the survey that we've conducted across the not-for-profit and higher ed industry and what that all means. And then what we'll do is go into the audit and accounting of cryptocurrency. So with that said, let's talk about the blockchain. Now, I'm not going to go in detail about the technology behind it, but what we need to know here is cryptocurrency, in order to transact in it, relies on the blockchain. And what the blockchain is, it's a method of recording information. A blockchain is a distributed ledger. Think of it as a financial ledger that duplicates and distributes transactions across a network of computers participating in the blockchain. Basically, the network of computers are called the peer-to-peer nodes. And then every transaction in the ledger is authorized by a digital signature of the owner, which is a hashtag, which authenticates the transaction and safeguards them from being tampered. So if we want to take a step back and think of the blockchain, we could think of it as a massive Google spreadsheet that's shared amongst numerous computers in a network. And the fascinating thing about this is that everybody could see the data, but nobody could manipulate or corrupt the data. So the blockchain itself is not governed by the community. It's actually a set of protocols and processes that was integral part of the original network architecture. So it's embedded in the technology itself, these set of rules. So to be a part of the community that supports the blockchain, you have to accept the rules. And each node that is connected to this blockchain accepted those set of rules that was originally established, and you cannot change those rules once it's been established. So when a transaction is onboarded or initiated on the blockchain, it will check with each of the nodes, making sure that that transaction meets the original network or the original rules. And if it does, it would then be accepted into the blockchain. The chain would be locked, and a new hashtag would then be produced. And a hashtag, you could think of it as a transaction number, and then it'll create the next link. So that, once again, at a high level, that's how the blockchain works. The more important takeaway here is the fact that the cryptocurrency relies on the blockchain, on the blockchain technology. So we've categorized crypto assets into these 8 different categories. And then once you start jumping into each of these categories, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of crypto assets that would fall into one of these 8 categories. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these categories with you, but I'm going to highlight a couple of items that you may already be aware of. So a crypto asset could be used as a payment currency. So what that means is, your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, you could buy and sell goods in exchange for Bitcoin. The next one that we've all heard of in recent times is the non-fungible tokens, or NFT. So this, if you all remember, it's the Bored Ape, where basically it's unique. It's been created, and basically demand is increases the price of it. So with the NFTs, there's other examples. Dogecoin, for example, that Elon Musk heavily supported, and others. But basically, these are just through demand that are created, and really, the transactions in these are quite, if if it becomes popular, the transactions will significantly increase or it'll decrease. On the, a couple of things to note, the NBA, MMA, other professional leagues are starting creating online trading cards, and you could view those as NFTs as well. So you'll buy the rights of that trading card. But once again, one last thing is with the stable coin here, those are backed by, or those are benchmarked against currency, which we'll talk about in the upcoming slides. So they could be backed by the US dollar or some other foreign currency. But remember, once you start dissecting into any one of these 8 crypto assets, it just exponentially gets more and more. All right. So how do we hold crypto assets? There's really a wallet is set up. And if you want to think of a wallet, you could think of it as your bank account, right? And there's 2 types of wallet. There's something called a hot wallet and a cold wallet. The hot wallet is connected to the internet. So that could be, your Coinbase account, or your Robinhood account, where you have a username, a password, or even the private key, and you're automatically connected to the internet, and then you could transact in the crypto assets. Then you have before I go into the cold wallet, the benefit of the hot wallet is that it's easy and very efficient to transact than the cold wallet. Now, what the cold wallet is, it's it's offline. So basically, this could be a thumb drive. It could be a laptop that is not connected to the internet. The benefit of this is that it's more secure because it'll be protected from online hackers. But the downside of that, it's a little bit harder to transact using a cold wallet. What you would essentially have to do is move the crypto assets out of the cold wallet and into a hot wallet. So that is a 2-step process. Now, with any wallet, there's something called a public key and a private key. So think of the public key as a view-only access to what's sitting inside the wallet. And then you would give this public key to anyone in order for them to give you crypto assets or to transfer assets into your wallet. However, having the public key, you wouldn't be able to transfer any crypto assets out of the wallet. Now, the private key is just the opposite, and you could think of it as the keys to the kingdom. Really, whoever has a private key has access to transfer assets out of the wallet. They have the ability to transfer assets into the wallet. But and the important part here is that if a hacker or if somebody has your public key and they steal the assets out of your wallet, it's very hard to recoup it because the whole idea of cryptocurrency is being anonymous. So when we're looking at controls relating to the private keys, you want to use the same mindset as your PIN to your ATM card. You want to install a 2-factor authentication. You want to make sure that the URL you're using is appropriate, and most of the not-for-profits higher ed do not actually hold wallets. What they do is they'll ask a third-party vendor like a Coinbase, Robinhood, to basically establish the wallet, maintain the securities around it, and then there's a username and a password associated with it. But just keep in mind here that there is this hot wallet and cold wallet concept when it comes to storage and custody. So how can we use crypto assets in the not-for-profit and the higher ed sector? So we've seen it as a payment system. So organizations paying for goods and services. We've seen it using organizations has been investing in it. And what I mean by that, either directly, where they're purchasing Bitcoin, Ethereum, or through a alternative investment, a fund of fund, a VC hedge fund, where that fund's whole sole purpose is to invest in crypto assets. Grant making and contributions, we're seeing an increase in that. So if you all remember back a couple of years ago, even if longer, a lot of startup companies were donating or founders were donating stock to not-for-profit organization. Well, we're seeing that with cryptocurrency where these founders are donating actual cryptocurrency to not-for-profit organizations. And then we're seeing grant-making organizations granting cryptocurrency to grantees. And time to time, we're seeing certain universities being more open to, tuition payments being received in crypto assets. And we're going to be talking about the benefits and the risks with all of this, but these are some of the ways that you could use cryptocurrency, or businesses or organizations are using cryptocurrency. Now let's talk about the benefits here. You don't have to go through a central banking system to transact in crypto assets, right? It's not tied to the Federal Reserve. It's not tied to any geopolitical location. So basically, if there is a natural disaster somewhere, all a recipient needs is a cell phone and a laptop and an internet connection in order to receive crypto assets, right? So it allows not-for-profit organizations to be able to reach individuals in areas of the world where it's been hit with natural disaster and provide them with funding or financial assets. It's insulated from traditional monetary regulation. So, for example, we've seen in Venezuela with the high inflation there, more and more individuals there are transacting in cryptocurrency, specifically in Bitcoin, to be able to mitigate some of the inflation issues. And we've seen that in other parts of the world. We're seeing younger individuals and more individuals using crypto assets day to day, also as a way, and moving away from fiat currency. And also, as I mentioned earlier, as a donation of resources, sending financial resources to geographic regions which are affected by natural disasters or some kind of government political issues, and where you couldn't go naturally through the central banking system. Now, these are the benefits of it, but there are drawbacks or uncompensated risks that we have to also look at. And this is important because I think any organization needs to understand what the benefits are, but then also understand what the risks are. One is regulatory risk. So if you take it back to 2008 all the way through, even a year ago, the regulatory risk here was very low. It wasn't, the U.S. government hadn't placed in any regulatory requirements, and it's very similar to the Wild Wild West. Now, we're seeing discussions from the White House, the SEC, the FASB, talking about regulating the crypto market, and what that could do, for better or worse. It could, it could put safeguards for investors, but then also it could impact pricing or valuation of the crypto assets. And we did see, when the SEC is talking about regulating crypto assets, we do see a small decrease in valuation from that standpoint. Also, regulators, the SEC has halted sales of certain types of crypto assets, which did significantly hinder valuation there. The next item is low barrier of entry, but it's a difficult exit. So let's take an example, Dogecoin. Maybe a year ago, it was trading for maybe 1/100th of a penny. So what that meant is for $1,000, you could get hundreds of millions of this Dogecoin. Elon Musk set off a bunch of tweets about it, and it gained popularity in Steam. The pricing went to 50 cents. And then a large number of individuals started selling their Dogecoins off. What happened was that certain investors weren't able to unload. So you have this difficult exit because basically what it is whether or not there's enough demand out there to be able to sell your crypto asset. And then there's this whole idea of bad actors doing this pump and dump, so to say, with crypto assets. They'll create a crypto asset, they'll hype it up, they'll sell it to the investors, and then they'll take the money and run. And then the investors are holding worthless crypto assets. And we did see that. We do see theft, and not so much theft or hacking into the blockchain, because the blockchain has secure controls, but more into hacking into the wallet themselves by getting access to the private key and then stealing the crypto assets out of the individual's wallet. And then lastly, and more importantly, is the manipulation of market. Celebrities will tweet something, and then it'll drive up the price of crypto. I think the latest case was with Kim Kardashian and the SEC coming down on her for doing something, illegally manipulating the market or something along those lines. But what I'm getting at here is celebrities or influencers could back up a crypto asset, increase the valuation, and within a matter of minutes, it could then go down. So once again, I think you need to look at the benefits and the risks and then determine what's best for the organization, and if this is something that you want to get involved with. So we're to our third polling question. I'll turn it to Danielle at this time.
Great, thank you, Ali. So here's poll question number 3. How often do you talk about cryptocurrency as part of management and or board meetings? A, frequently, B, once in a while, C, not on our radar. As a reminder, if you'd like to receive CPA credit for today's webcast, you will need to respond to at least 3 of the 4 polling questions. And we'll give everybody a few more moments here to respond. Fantastic. Here are the results.
And this, what's interesting here is this split between once in a while and not on a radar was something that I think we've figured out and talked about during the results of our survey. So with that said, I think I'll turn it over to AJ to talk about our survey.
Great, thank you so much, Ali. Yeah, this is a great segue into the survey. And I'll talk a little bit, the next section will be sort of the survey, what we asked, and the results. And honestly, in the section after that, I'll spend a lot more time on, which is the results and kind of implications of the survey results. So with that, I'll move to into the survey itself. So we conducted the survey towards the end of last year, the beginning of this year. We had the survey open for about a month and a half or so. We sent the survey to almost 1,000 individuals, mostly higher ed, but certainly some at cultural institutions, museums. And we did get a response rate pretty consistent with general survey responses, which is a little under 10%. So we viewed that the results were telling in terms of getting the data to form some understanding. And maybe just as a backdrop, and maybe why a lot of you are here today, is the survey came as a result of really questions that came from industry. We were getting a lot of questions from our clients, maybe they would get a potential donor that wanted to donate, or they would see something in the news and say, hey, what is institution X doing, or what is institution Y doing, or what's going on? And so we thought, maybe we should put together a survey to actually collect some data and see what's actually going on. So here's a response. Again, I'm going to blast through these pretty quickly. I'd like to spend a little more time on the implications of the results rather than the actual results themselves. But real quick, as I said, the vast majority of the respondents were kind of in the higher ed space, college, universities. There were a couple of, cultural museums that did respond. And you see there's a wide swath of representatives across different states, mostly, I would say, West Coast institutions. Maybe that's perhaps as a result of, Moss Adams and Prager's headquarters being on the West Coast. Again, I'm going to blast through these pretty quickly. A pretty wide swath of institutions across all different, sizes, from, small, generally, probably small colleges, liberal arts schools to, multi-campus systems, on the higher end, over $1 billion, or, very wealthy, institutions well endowed. We thought this was pretty interesting. I mean, one question that we did get from industry was, who should be responsible for cryptocurrency decisions? And, we were kind of curious as we sent this out, who's going to respond? As you can see, the vast majority of the respondents did come from the finance department. I guess that is pretty intuitive. There should be certainly involvement from the finance department, certainly CFO, controller, but definitely treasurer and investment office as well. Certainly less presidents. I'd say advancement, but yeah, we thought that was pretty interesting. I'm going to get into this a little more detail later, but this was obviously a big question. I'm sure a lot of you are curious kind of what percentage of institutions are accepting or not accepting. The answer is it's 80-20, at least from our survey. So 80% of institutions are not accepting crypto, and 20% are. Of the 80%, 15% have considered it but are currently not accepting it at this time. Again, looking across the different institutions, who's accepting it? Mostly bigger institutions. I guess that makes sense. But small fraction of colleges and other institutions as well. No museums, interestingly, are accepting it currently. In terms of kind of who is, or are you limiting the type of cryptocurrency that you accept? A lot of the stuff that Ali was sort of alluding to earlier, for instance, do you have a policy that you would accept Bitcoin and not Dogecoin, or things like that? Looks like all universities that accept it do have a limitation, but no, about half the colleges don't have a limitation on the type of crypto. This is really interesting to us in terms of policies, similar to a debt policy or an investment policy. Do you have a policy on cryptocurrency? It looks like of those that do, mostly in the university side, and those that don't, I guess we did get a lot more university respondents than colleges. In terms of who, do you have a third-party custodian that handle it? It looks like about half don't on the university side, half do on the college side, and then certainly more universities do than don't. In terms of reasons for not accepting cryptocurrency, importantly, this question was sort of a multi-choice question, so the numbers can add up to more than 100%. Certainly some people responded by saying, it's reason, regulatory risk, we don't accept it, and manipulation issues, and low barrier to entry, difficult to exit issues. But it did seem that the knowledge level around cryptocurrency was definitely a deciding factor. It doesn't show it on this slide, but this was a large respondents here. And with that, I will pass it back to Danielle to go over the polling question.
Thank you, AJ. Here we are at our final polling question. What are your concerns with cryptocurrency? A, regulatory risk. B, manipulation of the market. C, low barrier to entry, difficult to exit. D, knowledge level regarding cryptocurrency, the supporting technology, and associated risk. For those of you that would like a copy of today's slides, you can download them from the folder that says Slide Deck and Handouts. We will also be sending the slides via email tomorrow, along with a recording of the webcast. And we'll allow just a few more seconds for a few more responses to come in. And let's move on to the results.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. I mean, I would say consistent with our survey data. You know, the majority of institutions and those responding to the survey cited limited knowledge, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as we get into sort of some of the policies that might make sense for institutions to set up. But certainly, there's a smattering of other risks that that institutions are concerned about. And again, I'll get into, there are ways to mitigate a lot of these risks. Policies can really help do that. But again, I'll speak to that shortly. So getting into cryptocurrency from a market perspective, and I'm sure this is why a lot of you are here, there's just been an explosion of cryptocurrency in the marketplace. And this is obviously private sector, not higher ed, not for profit. But you can see we used Coinbase as a proxy to see what's the uptake in our society. It's hard to get a sense of who's using crypto. It's obviously private, but Coinbase is a publicly traded company, as some of you may be aware. They are a cryptocurrency broker, similar to like a Charles Schwab, for instance, or an Ameritrade. But those kind of larger, well-established brokers were slow to get into crypto, and so it allowed for companies like Coinbase to enter the market and sort of build their presence. And Coinbase, I think, is at least the U.S.'s largest crypto broker. And so you can see, from let's say Q4 2020 to Q2 2022, just the massive growth, right? 140% CAGR over that period. A lot of private companies are accepting cryptocurrency for goods and services. You can see some really big names here. Obviously, I'm sure everyone's familiar with a lot of these names. So, generally speaking, I think higher education and not-for-profit are a little bit slower than the private sector to uptake, but you can see that the private sector has moved towards acceptance generally of cryptocurrency. We would be remiss not to talk about what has been referred to the crypto winter of 2022. I would say before this period, there's a lot of surmising about, what is cryptocurrency? Is it a currency? Is it an investment? Is it an inflation hedge? There were arguments for all of them. I would say, in my personal opinion, looking at what's happened in 2022, crypto has sold off, I would say, much more broadly than the equity or the bond markets. I think I looked this morning. I think over the past 12 months, Bitcoin and Ethereum are down about 70% off of their highs. So that's pretty substantially, more volatile than the general stock market and the bond market. So, that could be specific to this specific period in time, or it could be because there's a bubble. I guess we will find out as we move into the future. I will say that there were a couple of bankruptcies in cryptocurrency. This Terra USD and the Luna coin went bankrupt. I think it sort of speaks a little bit to Ali's former comment about the manipulation in the market. There were a couple of bad actors that I think shorted. They saw an opportunity. And so obviously a big risk and something to be concerned about. And for those that are considering policies, make sure you sort of think these things through and make sure we put those policies in place to mitigate those risks. But with that, let me see if Ali has anything to add here.
AJ, I think you've covered it.
Okay, thanks. So these next couple of slides, I'm going to spend a little more time on than the previous slides. I think these are the implications, and I think what to us is much more interesting. So of the survey respondents, I think I mentioned earlier, 20% currently accept cryptocurrency, 80% do not. What's really interesting is in this 80%, 64% have never considered it. So meaning they're really just not accepting it because they haven't historically. It's not a deliberate decision that they've made. It just hasn't sort of either come up, it hasn't been raised as a topic, or it's not important enough to be considered. And in our view, that's just too high of a percentage across the board. We think maybe it should be flipped, right? That most institutions should consider crypto, not saying that they should accept it, but it should be considered, and the decision not to accept it really should be deliberate. As I mentioned earlier, and I think the survey results on this particular webinar sort of pointed to the limited knowledge as cited as a reason for non-acceptance. In my view, we don't think that everyone needs to understand the underlying technology to be able to consider cryptocurrency. You don't need to really understand the blockchain. The key things that you really do need to understand are the risks inherent in cryptocurrency and the operational components. And some of those kind of go hand in hand, right? Operational components have risks, and sort of thinking how to mitigate those risks or what might be best for your institution. But again, those in our view are really the key things you should spend most of your time kind of thinking about, learning about, but not necessarily the underlying technology. I'll touch upon a couple of the other items for non-acceptance regulatory guidance. Obviously, cryptocurrency is relatively new. And so there's sort of, limited guidance in terms of, accounting, although currently it is, and I know Ali will speak to this at the end of our presentation, it's currently accounted for as an intangible asset. President Biden earlier this year did create an executive order to create a national policy. So, hopefully we'll get some guidance from that, and that might even help mitigate risk and increase sort of the knowledge of the general population. In terms of who should be taking leadership, again, no real consensus, but it does point to the finance office. I assume we have a lot of finance officers on this webinar, and so it really should be you and your colleagues that I would say take up the leadership of creating policies and thinking through what might make sense in terms of cryptocurrency, or what may not make sense for your institutions. But again, being deliberate, we view as really important for all institutions, similar to having an investment policy or a debt policy, right? If you do have an endowment, you really should have an investment policy. Peer adoption, everyone's, I think, looking to each other in terms of what institution X is doing, what institution is Y doing. It kind of creates a little bit of a chicken and egg issue. But I'll get into, there are some larger institutions that have accepted, and I'll talk about that in just a second. In terms of where higher ed and not-for-profit really touch, where cryptocurrency touches in the sector, it's really across these three buckets: philanthropy, investments, and tuition. I don't want to list all these out, but philanthropy, there's obviously a lot of upside, a lot of pros. Most of the wealth, I don't want to say most of the wealth, that might be a misnomer, but certainly younger people have likely to invested in crypto early, and so have seen a lot of capital gains in this area. So philanthropy, it's a good vehicle to build new donors, to access new donors. And certainly there are some people that are sitting on pretty large capital gains. And so for those that get in early, it might be an opportunity to gain access to this cohort of individuals. I'll talk a little bit about integration with research centers. This is kind of an interesting area, particularly for those that have tech programs at their institutions, for higher education institutions that have technology, building crypto programs or innovation centers on campus. There's really a synergistic approach here to building philanthropy and training and sort of connecting donors with those centers. I'll touch upon investments. It is or has been a rapidly growing asset class. A lot of investors do have portfolios. Again, it obviously, as we mentioned earlier, it is a volatile investment. So it's certainly not for all institutions, not all endowments. Probably, maybe better reserved for the wealthier, larger institutions that do have a higher risk tolerance on their investment side. But we do think, again, all institutions should deliberate and consider cryptocurrency. The answer might be no, but it should be considered. Lastly, on tuition, certainly for international students, this could make sense. Limited transaction fees, don't have kind of the 3% credit card fees, and less friction. So maybe in the future, as we get more guidance, particularly from the U.S. government and maybe internationally, this is certainly an area that to keep an eye on. That might make sense for some institutions, maybe all institutions, to consider. Here's a quick list of some philanthropy that has been publicly announced. You see some pretty big numbers here. I think this University of Maryland donation came in within the last couple of days, so almost 10 million. It's a pretty sizable number. I'm sure everyone on this call would like to get their hands on some of these donors, but thought this was a pretty interesting list. And again, I think this presentation will be sent around, or you'll have access to it afterwards, so you'll be able to view this in your leisure. In terms of where crypto is coming up in endowments, you can see on the right a smattering of these are large, generally well-endowed institutions that have announced that they do have an allocation to cryptocurrency. Some of these, particularly with the technology sides, like the MITs, for instance, maybe the Stanfords, Carnegie Mellons, that do have research centers on crypto. It is a very interesting programmatic way to sort of build your student base, your endowment base, and your kind of alumni base and potentially donor base. So some really interesting ways to think about cryptocurrency and sort of transforming the institution. I think I already spoke about this. Again, these are larger, well-endowed institutions. Michigan and Yale have announced that they've invested in crypto. Harvard and Brown are rumored. Columbia and University of California have mentioned that they're keeping an eye on it. In terms of tuition and fees, there are a couple of select institutions that are accepting cryptocurrency for tuition and fees. Generally, those are schools with cryptocurrency programs, so it sort of makes sense for them. As a general matter, it hasn't really been accepted across the board or really at many institutions for tuition and fees. But again, something to keep an eye on in the future, as we move forward and maybe as we get some more guidance from the government, particularly from a regulatory perspective. So, I think I've mentioned this. I don't want to beat this too hard, but we really do believe that cryptocurrency, the decision to reject it or accept it, really should be deliberate. Similar to debt policies or investment policies, institutions really should be thoughtful as to why they're not accepting it. There's a lot of benefits to putting a cryptocurrency policy in place. We've listed them here, sort of in the bottom in bullet form. Obviously, fostering internal communication, really beneficial for all institutions. It helps unify the institution in terms of, how you're thinking about risk, how you're thinking about practices, and in terms of internal and external communication, there's a unified kind of strategy. It ensures that you've got the best thinking from the institution together, and that those strategies are aligned, kind of mitigating risk, and certainly helping the institution understand itself better. I see we have about 15 minutes, so I'm gonna try to speed this up just a bit here. Cryptocurrency, from our perspective, the policy is really a function of risk tolerance. That's really kind of the core of what a cryptocurrency policy should be. So it should be informed by your mission, by your culture, history, and certainly by the key constituents, the personalities, the president, board chair, certainly faculty, alumni, student body, et cetera. I would say the key things kind of sort of practically coming out of a cryptocurrency policy are things like, do you have thresholds for, minimum and maximum? Do you accept a $5, for instance, cryptocurrency donation, or is it $1,000, or is it $10,000, right? For those that don't have policies, it's impossible to communicate that if you get an inbound request from a donor, things like that. What types of currencies do you accept, right? Do you accept, like Ali was saying, Dogecoin? Is it limited to Bitcoin or Ethereum, et cetera? Those types of things. In terms of operational components, like how are you transacting? Is it use a hot wallet, a cold wallet, mixture of both? What are the policies around liquidation? Do you liquidate upon receipt? Do you sort of pass it to you have an allocation in your investment portfolio and sort of pass it that way, et cetera, et cetera? All these things, likely should be considered, definitely for those that accept. Lastly, I'm just going to talk about steps to creating a cryptocurrency policy. The first step is to create a working group, an internal working group. And as we mentioned earlier, the finance office really should be the one to take the lead here. But there should be representatives, I would say, from across the institution, at least that where cryptocurrency touches. It should, I would say, at this point, from the beginning point, be confined to the administration. So, representatives from advancement, potentially admissions, maybe from the investment office. That really should be sort of the working group. And so, once you get kind of these key stakeholders in a room, and maybe over a series of meetings, deliberate, how can cryptocurrency help or advance our mission, right? That's really at the core of why everyone is working at the institution that they're working on, right? Is to really advance the mission. And so, what are kind of the key guidelines, thresholds, things like that can help, push that mission forward, while kind of mitigating risk to the extent that it can be. Once you sort of deliberate these things and put these things into, I would say, thought and words, you can sort of draft a policy. Maybe that's in outline form, maybe it's in written form, but then you can sort of bring it up the chain, maybe present it to the president, get the president's thoughts and buy-in, and then from there, bring it up to the board for their consideration. And then, once you have that, then you've got the entire institution, and it's codified. And so the institution really understands, what are we doing? How are we doing it? It's a really powerful tool to help your institution move forward. And then certainly it's not, like all policies, certainly not something that should be put on the shelf. It should be dusted off from time to time. So maybe there's within the policy, there's sort of board reporting on an annual basis to make sure that, that policy is revisited. Making sure that procedures remain sort of up to date. Maybe there's new technology that comes out, new practices come out, making sure that those are considered and updated in the policy going forward. So with that, let me pass it back to Ali to round it out with kind of the accounting implications.
Thanks, AJ. So a couple things to note here is that the FASB and other accounting state boards was silent about the accounting treatment for crypto. And really what happened was the professionals, so the CPA firms and others got together and created this common consensus, issued white pages on how crypto assets should be accounted for. So, real quick, if you received, crypto as a form of donation, you would account for it or, record it the same as you would a stock, or real estate, or any other contributor service contribution. So you would record it at fair value at the date of gift. To determine what, how fair value is determined, at the date of gift, you'll need to look at the exchanges, various exchanges, to see what the trading price is for that date to determine what the fair value would be. And once again, if you're using third-party vendors like the Giving Block, Bitcoin, or BitGive, Fidelity Charitable, they would help you establish fair value. If you have your own wallet and the assets are coming directly into your own wallet, you would have to create a policy on determining fair value. But there are multiple exchanges. You can determine what the fair value at the date of gift is. So that's day one accounting. And then when it comes down to classification, the industry kind of went back and said, okay, how should you hold it? Is it fair value, or is it inventory? Is it intangible? And it all comes down to what type of organization you are. So if you were an investment company, you would hold those assets as fair value. For our not-for-profit and higher ed sector, where we landed was intangible assets. And the reason why is because we know that cryptocurrency is not a fiat currency. We know under the GAAP definition, it does not fall under a financial instrument. So what can it be? Is this intangible asset. And under intangible asset accounting, you would hold it at your cost, which is the fair value at the date of contribution, and then you would test it for impairment. Keep in mind, if the asset is impaired and then subsequently recovered, you wouldn't write up that recovery. Any appreciation subsequent to the impairment would be realized when you sell the crypto assets. So once again, even under the tuition revenue or just revenue recognition model, the revenue recognition model wouldn't really change because you're holding, you're receiving crypto assets, and then day two accounting would be holding it as an intangible asset. So if you're holding the cryptocurrency, if you're directly investing in the crypto assets, you would hold that as an intangible asset. So if you went out and bought Bitcoin or XRP or whatever. But if you're holding it through an investment company, and that investment company follows topic 946 or the investment company guide, you would hold that investment at fair value using the net asset value. So once again, I just want to bring this up that, if you're investing through crypto assets through a fund, the accounting for that would be a little bit different. So I'm going to stop here and talk about a few things. The AICPA put out an audit and accounting guide in 2019 and subsequently updated it in 2021 and last update in June of 2022. So, you could Google the AICPA audit and accounting guide for digital assets, and it's a great tool to use. The FASB is actually currently working on a project to address cryptocurrency. It's on the deck or on their agenda to talk about in 2023. So they're going to talk about disclosures, accounting for the crypto assets. So something to be aware of and on the lookout for. And I think it's going to bring some consistency across the board and some guidance. But this is the first time that the FASB has decided to talk about it. They didn't. They felt before. They didn't feel that it was mainstream enough to be discussed, but now they're putting that on the agenda. With that said, once again, the SEC put out a bulletin talking about the safeguards surrounding crypto assets, very similar to some of the statements you see about alternative investments. We have to be good stewards and really consider the risks and the benefits before investing in it. And also they put out some how to FAQ, how-to ideas on security, access, and things to that nature. So once again, I think as more and more, there's more and more traction when it comes to the cryptocurrency, and it becomes more and more mainstream, I think we're going to see more regulatory requirements out there. And then I know just recently there was an executive order on the digital assets that President Biden mentioned or issued back in the early Q1 of 2022. And this was during the crypto winter that we saw. So I think overall, specifically in the US, we're going to see a lot more regulation around this. I think we're going to see more accounting guidance, increased disclosures relating to crypto assets. And I think there's another slide here that is a link to that executive order, and all of this information is really available to you all subsequent to this presentation. With that said, I'll turn it over to Danielle to field any questions you all may have, or to close out the presentation. Danielle?
Hi, Ollie. Thank you so much. It looks like we're coming to time, so if we didn't answer your questions, I will explain to you in just a moment how we will get back to you. But thank you, Ollie and AJ, for a great presentation today. I also want to thank the audience for being engaged and submitting your questions to help guide today's conversation. If we did not have time to answer your questions, we will do our best to follow up with you after the webcast. Also, feel free to reach out to our presenters if you have any additional questions. If you met all CPE requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE Progress window. A copy will be emailed within 2 weeks should you have any difficulty downloading it now. And for those of you that would like a copy of today's slides, you can download them from the folder that says Slide Deck and Handouts. We'll also be sending the slides via email tomorrow, along with a recording of the webcast. Finally, here's a link to an online survey for today's presentation. Thank you for joining our webcast. We hope you join us again next time. Take care, everybody.